Happy Tuesday, everybody, and happy National Nutrition Month. It's Dina, the dietitian, Dish with Dina. This week, I'm sharing with you some behind-the-scenes food and nutrition related things in honor of our National Nutrition Month's theme, the power of nutrition. Today, I am heading off shortly to one of the Head Start programs that I work with. So I'm an independent contractor and I work a variety of different jobs and my schedule is quite erratic. I go there every other Tuesday, and as you saw maybe in yesterday's video, which I think just published today because it took a long time to get together and load, I am back in New York City. I've been working out of Ocean County, New Jersey at my mom's house in the past handful of months while I am her full-time primary caregiver, but she's okay independently for a couple of days on her own, and she does have her hospice workers coming in this week to check on her. So if you saw yesterday's video where I gave a little tour of my mom's kitchen in her spacious home, her 2-bedroom home out in Ocean County, New Jersey, compare it to that. That's all the kitchen I get here in the East Village. So today was supposed to be, I think, an at-home video because I meant to film all this last week, but my cousin from California came and that threw off things a little bit, and I didn't want to necessarily do this while she was there. So I waited until this week to get things started. So last week would have been kind of like a day off / admin day, and maybe I would have seen some patients on that Tuesday, but this week I am going to the Head Start school. So I'll be wrapping up in a few minutes to head out there after I do my makeup and get myself a little bit put together. Today's conversation was going to be around how I intentionally eat or mindfully eat in a home environment, but I'm going to do that more so when I'm also out and about because as timing would have it, I'm not feeling so great. I feel very, very depleted, very run down. For any of you out there that are also juggling erratic schedules or 3 full-time things at once or are a caregiver, then you know what I'm talking about, what I'm going through. And I also just like yesterday's meals just did me in a bit, and I feel very heavy and uncomfortable. So I'm gonna take a little bit easy on my tummy today. And I did start off, I had a yogurt. I'm not dairy bothers me a little bit, but not in the case of this. And I stirred in some peanut butter to make sure I had that fullness factor and that balance I mentioned yesterday with the carbohydrates. Added in some extra protein and extra fat in there just to satiate me because it's a small cup of yogurt. It's not going to be keeping me full for more than like an hour and a half, but if I add in a tablespoon of peanut butter, I can probably extend that. And then we'll see what happens later on. I might just get like a tea and like maybe a bagel or something very, very light to see how my stomach is feeling and my overall energy. And thankfully today I don't have to work a full 6 hours. I think I'm only working 4.5 hours on site. So I'll be able to come home and then I can share that with you as well when I get back and see what's up. I couldn't record anything from inside work because there are children there, and I am now on my way home, so we're flash forwarding a bit, but I allowed today's theme for my video, right? So I'm trying to document National Nutrition Month in a week in the life of me, and the theme overall for this year's National Nutrition Month is the power of nutrition. But for my case, what I'm trying to consider is how we can be empowered by the choices we make, or how nutrition can provide us with power that we need, whether it's energy, fuel, etc., or fun things. I work with 3 to 5-year-olds, and even though this video today on Tuesday was supposed to be filmed last week, where I was actually home and working from home and trying to be intuitive about my choices at home, I thought about the mindset of a child and how they don't necessarily have the choices to make as far as they're not going grocery shopping or preparing meals for themselves, obviously, but they have an innate ability to regulate their intake, and that is very intuitive. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later, because your girl here was not very intuitive today at work. And technically I said I wasn't feeling so hot when I filmed the first part of today's video. So I was like, I'm just gonna get tea and toast, and it turned out that I'm a little hungrier than that. So I had an abridged day at work. I only worked about 4 hours, and now I'm heading back home. I'm gonna stop by one of the shops here and grab a sandwich. I'm kind of jonesing for maybe a bagel still, but maybe tuna salad or something on there. So stay tuned, and I'm going to share with you a little bit more as far as insights on intuitive eating. This intentional eating, I guess I technically called it intuitive eating, but I think I can use it in both ways now. So the intent that you have when you're eating at home of what you're supposed to be doing and satisfying yourself and your hunger cues and your schedule, etc. And the way I was relaying it in my mind about how children eat, how there's that innate ability of consuming calories right there. Hungry, they cry. They're full, they spit up. And one of the big things that has been coming up a lot, and I guess for most people it would, when you're around the ages of 3 to 5, there's this thing called selective eating and aversions and taste and texture changes. And for children who are eating in school, who are being fed in school, and then kind of comparing it to things that they're getting at home, whether the home environment is providing them with healthy choices or takeout options, whatever it is, it's understandable that children are going to potentially have some sort of issues with what they're getting that's not made from or served in their house. So that has been one of the things that is coming up in my meal observations when I go to the classrooms. And so I'm sharing that. Like I said, today was supposed to be a writing at home day if this was last week's version of this video, but instead I was on site at the Head Start, and I thought, how can I relay this to what we're talking about here? I'm not making food at the school, but school is making food. They have scratch cooking there. I help with creating the menus. We try to do a very, very diverse food options, and technically it's funded by the government, so we have to abide by certain criteria. And so the intention there, the way that we try to create that, is to give children variety both in taste and texture and color and preparation. So some things might be raw food, some things might be cooked food, some things might be made in a one pot, one pan type of meal like a lasagna. Some things are standalone items where they can distinguish each ingredient from another, and we try to expose them to as much as possible, both again in taste, texture, variety, colors, etc., because there's obviously reasons that they're doing that. Because I wasn't feeling so great today, I didn't bother going out to eat or get anything, and also I had a truncated day, so I didn't really feel like it was necessary for me to skip out for lunchtime or going to grab any lunch or anything like that. Normally I'm not a grazer, so I don't pick at things throughout the day, but well, you can kind of see behind me. Behind me, sometimes we'll have bags of popcorn, and maybe we'll do like a handful of nuts or cheese or something like that, or yogurt. Ideally, when I eat, I try to eat and consume enough calories, as I was mentioning in yesterday's video, to satisfy me through the whole entire day. In today's case, there was a lot going on. I was on site in that school, and I didn't really have a lot of time to stop and eat. So all of this to say that I did get hungry. Now, putting this all together, when it comes to the physiological needs of our body and how we feed it versus the habits that we form. So I just got done saying with children, you want to expose them to as much as possible. And it takes about 12 to 20 times, according to research, to get them aware of what they're eating and feeling comfortable with, licking things and tasting things and smushing things up and putting things in their mouth and just experimenting with different kinds of foods. So as we get older, we start defining that maybe through external factors, or in my example previously of who is doing the feeding. Is it, grandma and her home cooking and it tastes really good? Is it other school environments or other environments where there's maybe a microwave and a box cutter and that's all they have available to them? And so again, tastes and textures might be quite different in both of those scenarios. When we as adults decide, I'm hungry for something, is it a true physiological hunger? Is it a habit out of, this is about the time that I start getting noshy, or I am called to eat even if I'm not physiologically hungry? And do we end up detaching from that as we get older? One of the things that I also want to loop in here too, I know I'm a little bit all over the place, but follow along because I just got done talking about children, and then as we age, how our habits are formed, and then as we get even older. And I'll bring this back to my mom, the whole discussion around my mom. When I look at her and I think I shared this example in yesterday's video too. She has set times that she eats. She doesn't necessarily feel the hunger cue. So like a child might feel hungry, right? Cries when they're hungry. They want the bottle. They want the whatever the food is that they're waiting to have. In my mom's case, she sets a timer, or she just knows there's certain times of the day that she's going to be having to feed herself. And so she eats out of habit, not necessarily hunger. So this is quite the distinction, and it's also, to me, very insightful to be able to see the spectrum of a human life in just the last 2 days and be able to compare and kind of make these connections. And I'm interested to see, in future years, how these children, these 3 to 5 year olds that I'm working with now, how they will develop their relationships to food, how food may or may not become a habit for them, or just a way of nourishment, or something that they enjoy making and doing for themselves. And the last thing that I want to say about this is flexibility. It's very easy, or it could be very easy, if you have control over what you have access to. If you, like me, even though my kitchen is tiny in the East Village, I have a flexible schedule, and I have access to food and a place to create meals for myself. Just like I was saying in that earlier clip, where if somebody does not necessarily have access to things and all they have is a box cutter and a microwave, or heat and eat options, whether it's by choice or by some sort of financial issues or strain, then again, their eating habits are going to be quite different. Their nutritional value could be quite different. Their increase or decrease of risk of outcomes health-wise could be quite different too. So just because you might have flexibility and control over what you are eating, where you're eating, and how you're eating, doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to be the healthiest options or the most accessible choices. It really also depends on so many other environments and factors. But convenience items can be strategic, and also this is where I would encourage people to learn about label reading too, because an educated consumer can make good decisions. So if you know what you're looking for on the back of the label, on the back of the food item, assuming that the food item that you choose does have a label on it, then that can help inform those decisions as well. What you're integrating, how often you're eating, things like that, and then leaving room for flexible options, like if you're going to do something homemade or if you're doing takeout. This is the end of today's video for Tuesday. Tomorrow is going to be much different. Tomorrow I am going to be back on campus at Lehman College, so I'll be doing my nutrition counseling at the Student Health Center there. I never know until the second I show up of what my schedule looks like, how busy I'm going to be. So we'll see if there is time for me to actually grab something to eat, or I might just bring stuff to have on hand that I can open up quickly, like maybe a can of soup or something like that, just in case it does get quite packed. And then I have a small space of time in between the end of my counseling sessions at the health center and when I go off to my classroom to teach my graduate class, which sometimes students will join me in person. More often than not, they do not. So I might be flying solo. And then from there, I'm going to be heading back to Ocean County, New Jersey to spend the rest of the week with my mom. To wrap this up, the goal of this video today was to talk about intentional eating and intuitive discussions and habit forming. And I know I was a little bit all over the place, but it felt insightful for me to kind of connect the dots of all these things, because even if you are not at home and you're relying on other people, you could still make informed choices of what you want to put in your body, or things that feel necessary for you to eat because you're just sustaining yourself. And if you are, a baby, a little kid, a toddler, and you can't make choices for yourself as far as what you're eating or when food is placed where it's placed, you can still sample and taste things and spit things out and be like, I don't like this and I want something different, until maybe you get used to trying things over and over again. So thank you for watching today's video. Leave a comment, message, like, subscribe, share if you don't mind. And I'll jump back on here again tomorrow when it's a little bit busier and trying to maintain my energy levels over a very, very potentially stressful and depleting day. So thanks everybody. Happy National Nutrition Month.